Welcome to Catholic Ed for All, your weekly insight into topics of special education in Catholic schools. My name is Dr. Raul Escarpio, and I invite you to join me each week as we learn how to be more inclusive in Catholic schools and continue to live out St. John Paul II's message of open wide the doors to Christ. Many thanks go out to RCL Benzinger, who is generously sponsoring this podcast. RCL Benzinger enriches the worldwide Catholic community by providing the most engaging and highest quality resources, programs, and services rooted in the rich and diverse tradition of the Catholic faith. And now, on to our show. On the show today, I am joined by Mr. Kevin Donohue, principal at St. Joseph Hawthorne School in Los Angeles, California. Why, hello, Kevin. Welcome to the show, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Raul. My pleasure.
I'm so glad you can make some time. And it's for those of you that are wondering, it is earlier in Los Angeles and much later now in Miami. So on that note, can you please tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I grew up in the Catholic system. I was adopted through Catholic Charities, went to Catholic school growing up through Notre Dame, and then through the ACE program came out here to Los Angeles in 2010. Since then, I've taught, been a vice principal, and now this is my second year as principal here at St. Joe's. I've got a wonderful, loving wife and 3 great kids, and life is great.
Amen. What a blessing, right? When life is that good, when God blesses us that way. All right. You were adopted through Catholic Charities. Can you share that a little bit about that real quick?
Oh, sure. So I grew up in Florida as well, and my birth mom became pregnant at age 19 and confronted with a really tough choice. She ultimately decided to put me up for adoption, and my parents, Mark and Louise, were working with Catholic Charities to find a child, and I was lucky enough for it to be me. So from birth, I've lived with them, and they've been wonderful, supportive parents.
Okay, the podcast can end right now because Kevin and I are like kindred spirits right now. Kevin, I have an adopted son.
Oh,
So,
really?
yes, and I'm from Miami, and we have an adopted son, and we will talk off air about it. But ladies and gentlemen, there's like glow and and my face is red because I am like, Kevin is all right, man. He's cool. Him and I can hang, and we could probably tell stories back and forth about this. So that's awesome. That's awesome. So you came through the ACE program at Notre Dame.
Yes, sir.
So the Christy Bonfiglio and Sean Smith and all those people out there.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, that's fantastic. They have a really good program. We always encourage all our Catholic educators between them and the Greeley Center. There's a lot that can be learned about Catholic education and inclusive education. So there's your shameless plug for both of those. So tell me about the greatness that is St. Joseph Hawthorne.
So this is truly an amazing community. I joined 2 years ago now at Easter. I was brought on board to begin the transition as principal, and we've got about 330 students in grades TK to 8. So we're thriving. We've got a wonderful STEM program. We're bringing technology into the school. We've got great renovations, and most importantly, just a real community feel. I feel when you walk on your campus, whether as a parent, a student, a teacher, or an alumnus, that you're really home, that you're really experiencing a sense of communion, a sense of faith, a sense of fellowship and respect.
Amen. And that's exactly what we want not only our schools, but our Catholic schools to be, an extension of home and faith-built and Christ-centered. So I'm glad to hear that's what you're working on there. So one of the reasons that I hear that it's great at St. Joseph Hawthorne is because you have an inclusive program. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
For sure. So when I came on board, the previous principal, Dr. Quinto, had worked with Dr. Arlene Platten to set up a system to support our students that had IEPs with both some push in and some pull out. So I was able to come in and already have a little bit of support personnel in place. And over the last 2 years, we've added a speech therapist to support our students that need some support with their linguistics. we've been partnering more and more with our local public school districts through title programs to support all of our students in terms of diagnosis and support. And most importantly, we've continued our STEP program to support those students that might have autism or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, all the different things that members of our community are experiencing.
So let's start slow. What ethnicities do you serve at your school? I assume Hispanic.
Yes, so we are majority Latino. Probably about 70% of our students come from Spanish-speaking homes of Central American or Mexican descent. But we are also multi-ethnic. A large proportion of the remainder of the 30% is a mixture of Filipino and African American. The majority of our students are Catholic, and by far, about 3 out of 4 of our students are at or below the poverty line. They receive free and reduced lunch through our school lunch program.
Okay, so what percentage of your school is in this inclusive program? You said you have about 330 students, so you're looking at what, 8-10% of your population?
Yeah, we have about 20 students that receive
Okay.
speech therapy currently, and then probably about another 20 students that are working through our STEP program and receiving at least some kind of contact with regards to academic support. We do have about another 40 to 50 students that work with our on-site counselors as well in terms of emotional and social support.
Are those diagnosed, the ones that work with the counselors and the one that work with the academic support?
It's a mixture. So some of our families, there's some reluctance to kind of go through the official process with some of our families. So it's a more informal diagnosis. Some of our families, we do work with the local school districts and doctor's office and things like that to get a formal diagnosis.
Very, very interesting. So it seems that you're a bit of a writer, huh, Kevin? And so first tell me how you got started on this blog thing that you like doing.
For sure. So in November, let me back up. I guess for the last couple of years, as I've been undergoing my own leadership journey, I've had the opportunity to learn a lot from others, and I wanted to put that learning into practice with some reflection. And so I took the opportunity in November to begin just kind of blogging, both about what I was reading or listening to on podcasts, what I was seeing in the classrooms and my meetings with parents and teachers, and make essentially a journal, but make it kind of public facing to try and get some feedback, cultivate some ideas, and maybe throw out some things to help out others, just as I've been helped out over the years.
All right, so you're doing it as a reflective piece, which is great because you're modeling what we want our teachers to be able to do, and that's be reflective practitioners in the classroom. So, what led to writing your piece, My Journey with Inclusion?
Well, I would say, Raul, you were my big inspiration here. So I've been blessed to listen to the podcast for almost 2 years now, and I think back, also you remind me a little bit of Pope Francis in the sense that I think your podcast and Pope Francis in different ways have challenged me to reflect upon who I am as a Catholic and who I am as an educator. I think the call to be inclusive, the call to welcome in all, to support all, to go to the margins, as our pontiff says, is something that I've struggled with over the years. And just in thinking about it as a principal, I kind of wanted to put those thoughts down on, virtual paper.
I've never been associated with the Pope in comparison or in the same sentence whatsoever. Um, I'm humbled that you would say that, but I don't consider myself in that league at all. But one way that I well, there's a lot of ways, but one way that I love our Pope, Kevin, is that when I'm presenting a lot throughout the nation or whatever, I always start with him with a quote that he says that each person is unique and unrepeatable. And
Yeah.
and I ask our teachers to reflect on that. Those of you that are listening right now, I know that Kevin has, just to understand that God took His time with us, that God looked at us and He knit us together, as it says in Psalm 139. He didn't just throw a bunch of pieces together, although He could. He took His time with us and said that it was good. And the way that Kevin is answering that call, and a lot of people throughout this country in inclusive education are answering that call, is that they're recognizing that they're going to the margins, as Kevin was just saying, that our dear Pope says. They're recognizing that everyone is unique and unrepeatable. And I always quote back to my friend Mike at the Greeley Center that says that baptism is their birthright, Kevin. That allows them that access to Catholic school. Okay, I'm on my soapbox again. Forgive me, Kevin.
No, no, no.
Um,
I 100% agree. I think as a principal, when I give tours to prospective families of our school, I say, regardless of what you can afford, regardless of who your child is, if you want a Catholic education, my job is to make sure you can get it. And if we don't have that mindset, if we don't have that mentality, I feel like we're failing a little bit in our faith.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell me about this piece. What? I know you said what drove you to do it, but what's it about?
So I essentially kind of reflect upon the four big stages of my life in terms of conclusion. And I think as a child growing up in a Catholic school, in a Catholic high school especially, I think like many people, there was a distance, a hesitance, a strangeness. I think sometimes as children and even adults, we fear people that are different than us. And I think I had that as well. And when it came to including people in the abstract, I think that was where there was a big hesitancy. But once I settled in to teaching, and I became more inclusive as an educator, someone who was trying to differentiate for my high students, differentiate from my low students, that's where I think I was really able to grow. And a big shout out to one of my students, Ethan, who, when I worked with him at St. Bernard's, where I was a middle school teacher, really kind of showed me as a teacher and as a parent the need to be inclusive and the need to try and be welcoming, and ultimately just to create a community around each one of our students as individuals to support them and help them grow. And so I end the piece by just reflecting as a principal, because now that I'm no longer in the classroom, I think you have that weird dichotomy where you're asking teachers to work on a day-to-day basis to fulfill a vision that you have as the leader, but that you don't get to implement in the same way as when you are working with the teacher, like working with the students in the classroom. And I think that can be tricky, but at the same point, I think as the leader, as the person with that vision, it's important that you kind of take that first step.
Absolutely. So on that same vein, on that same branch, with the lessons that you learned in the classroom and through your programs, let's offer some advice to some principals that are on the fence about this. And they're listening to the podcast and they're listening to you. And what can you tell them? And what they're coming to you and saying, look, Kevin, I don't know if this is going to work. You don't know my population. You don't know where I am. You don't know my pastor in a way at the church. Give them some advice, Kevin. What can they do? What can you tell them to make them feel better?
I think the first thing is to kind of just take that first step and meet with families that are coming to campus and meet with your teachers, especially your teacher leaders, and say, how would we feel about this? What can we do for this student in our own structure? We're a low income school, and I know that there are many schools across the country that are gifted to have a whole department dedicated towards supporting students, or a whole two or three faculty members, and our staff that works with our students, they're part-time, and they do it out of a sense of ministry, if anything. But I think taking that first step and saying, you know what, we're going to try. My guess is that many of our Catholic schools already have students that they need to support, and it's just a question of putting it forward, putting it in the center, and making sure that teachers are aware and that there are things that we can start doing. There are ways we can look up resources. It's a blessing to have podcasts and websites and all kinds of resources that 10, 15 years ago just weren't there. And to have ideas, resources, and strategies at our fingertips is an amazing thing.
And when in doubt, come and see St. Joseph Hawthorne School, right?
I welcome people all the time. We have a beautiful campus, and it's easy to share.
Amen. So with that being said, I'll ask you my last question, which I ask all my guests. What should Catholic special education look like?
I think Catholic special education is, at the end of the day, just Catholic education. We wouldn't hold out a student because of their income. We wouldn't hold out a student because of their race or their religion, even. At the end of the day, we are universal. We are Catholic. And so if we are going to take that and be part of our mission, then we need to welcome everyone, regardless of where they're at or where they're coming from.
Fantastic. Kevin, I want to thank you for joining me today. I wish you nothing but prayers and blessings as you continue that wonderful mission at the greatness that is St. Joseph Hawthorne. And I thank you so much for being here, and you have my prayers.
Thank you, Raul. Thank you.
God bless you, brother. Well, that's it for this week. If this podcast was a blessing to you, can you please head over to iTunes and subscribe and give us a review or a rating? It really does help other Catholic educators find the podcast and use it as a resource. Thanks again to the amazing people at RCL Benziger for generously sponsoring this podcast. Check out their new resource for Catholic schools, Blessed Are We, Faith in Action, which enables teachers to share the love of Christ with children who have special needs. Visit rclbenziger.com to learn more. Join me again next time as we continue to advance God's kingdom by including all of God's children in Catholic schools and faith formation. Until then, this is Dr. Raul Escarpio. Thanks for listening, and may God bless your day.